Welcome back to the Bible Reading Project. It is Thursday with my best friend Derrick wearing orange and a brand new haircut and no mustache. I love you, Derrick. I'm so glad you're here.
You said best friend.
I did.
You did.
I told you. I called
that
this
makes my heart warm.
Well, then take me out to
Ryan,
Mexican and pay for it.
sorry.
Take me out to Mexican. Pay for it.
I will.
We'll call it even.
I will. I think I paid for it last time.
You always do.
Yeah.
And that makes for a great friend. It's why you're on the Bible Reading Project.
Oh, sweet.
It's because you buy me lunch.
That's right. All right.
Jonah chapter 1, 16 verses. We've been talking about the purposes of God. I'm going to read a few verses. I want to dive right in. What we've been talking about is having a right heart, meaning I love God, but man, I'm going the wrong directions. And the reason I'm going the wrong direction is my perceptions start hindering the purposes of God in my life. What I think about God, what I think about people, what I think about myself. So I'm going to jump right in, verse 6, Jonah chapter 1. So the captain of the boat that Jonah's running from, trying to hide from God. What a great perception. He went down and said, Jonah's in the bottom of the boat. How can you sleep at a time like this? He shouted, get up and pray to your God. Maybe he will pay attention to us and spare our lives. And the crew cast lots to see which of them had offended the gods and caused a terrible storm. And when they did this, the lots identified Jonah as the culprit. Why has this awful storm come down on us? They demanded. Who are you? What's your line of work? What country are you from? What is your nationality? Jonah answered, I'm a Hebrew and I worship the Lord God of heaven who made the sea. And so here's the thought all week, my perceptions. Here's Jonah's perception of himself that we've landed on. First off, I don't want to do what God wants me to do, so I'm going to go the opposite way and hide from him. How tragic that you literally think as a human in your own perceptions that you can run from God and he has no clue where you are. Second perception was this. The reason I'm running is because I already have a preconceived idea. I know what God's going to do. I already know what he's going to do. And we talked a little bit about marriages, of how, our perceptions of the other. I already know what they're going to say. I already know. Every time I even mention it, she's going to get ticked. He's going to get ticked. We're going to fight over it so we don't even talk about it, right? We kind of learned a little bit. I love what you said the other day. Sometimes we don't agree, but we still have to find common ground to get to God's purposes, right?
Yep.
So then it says to Jonah, they ask him some questions. Who are you? What kind of work do you do? What country you're from? And what's your nationality? He answers back, I'm a Hebrew who worships the Lord. So his perceptions of himself seem pretty good, right? Like, I worship God. I'm a Hebrew. I'm running from him. But his perceptions of God were askewed because what he thought God would do, might do, could do, really just messed him up. I already knew you were going to do this before I even gave you the time, because in perceptions, oftentimes, we really want our way. That's what perceptions are. I want my way. I want it to happen my way, go my way. And oftentimes life doesn't. If you go to Jonah 4 and read it, you find him sitting kind of on a hillside by a tree, ticked off that a worm killed the tree. He's more concerned about the worm in the tree than he is the people.
Right.
So, I mean, that's how messed up perceptions can be.
Right.
But that's what I want to talk about in my personal life, and then ask you a question. Because perceptions, in the strangest of ways, but truly do become reality.
Right.
My first daughter, Olivia, you talked about your son the other day, so I'll throw in my daughter. She was in, I'm going to say this, maybe the 7th grade was when it was. She tried out for cheerleading. She made the team. So we were at the first little rehearsal of my first kid in cheerleading. And so they dished out all of the uniforms. Well, when they dished out all the uniforms, she ended up getting a bigger uniform than what she thought she wanted. And one of the girls made a comment of, well, you're bigger, you need that one. And then her A friend took a smaller uniform. I was sitting on about the 3rd row in the gym, and she looked at me after they'd already put all their clothes on, their uniforms on. They came back out, they did a little stunts, they did something, and she looked straight at me, and she grabbed her uniform, and she said, do I look bad? And I'm thinking, where in God's name would that even come? I mean, I was not even thinking that way. Right. But in her brain, in that moment, a seed was planted, a thought. Yeah. I must be fat. The end result of that story is she let that seed of that perception of being fat cause her to think she was fat, which led her down a road of bulimia. Every time she would eat, she would put her finger down her throat and make herself throw up.
Wow.
It was supernatural in how it all came about, and we found out, and she's since got healed. But I go back to that moment and realize that oftentimes perceptions that come that are reality come because of a little drip, a thought. A girl who suddenly feels fat, but it goes over and over and over. You're fat, you're ugly. It's what they're saying to Jonah. Who are you? What is your name? What do you do? I mean, those things of life that come that define us.
Correct.
You know, who are you? What do you weigh? Where do you work? Are you on the football team? Are you cheerleading? Are you? And then especially with Instagram, Snap, and all that's out there, you know, the comparisons back and forth that get a little drip. So I want to give you a minute to process it, because we don't really talk about what we're going to talk about. We just kind of let it happen. But can you go back in a time in your life, a kid, a young man, a married man, a father, where a drip got in your head, a thought, and that thought began to take root and germinate? And over time, that thought began to dictate your emotions and your feelings and your joy, your happiness. Because I find a lot of times that perceptions don't become reality overnight. It's like a slow drip. In the book, I talked about it yesterday. I'll do it again today. But Fireflies on the Bedpost, there I've got more copies available. But the first chapter that I labeled it is called A Little Drip. And I talk about how a thought that goes over and over and over for a day or an hour, not that bad. A week, maybe a month. But I find many times when I'm talking with people that I can trace their mess of their emotions, their marriage, their whatever.
Yeah.
I can trace it back to a drip, typically can trace it back to a drip that started. Something a father said, something a mother told them, something that happened to them. So can you identify a place in your life where a kid, a young man in ministry, in marriage, where you had a recurring drip that went over and over and over? Maybe failure, maybe guilt, maybe shame. And if so, what was it and how'd you overcome it?
There was a leader one time in my life that that was, in my opinion, was supposed to be there for me. I was searching for leadership.
Had your father died by this time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of maybe looking for even a father figure.
Yes.
Okay.
Father figure, someone just to speak into my life, because I valued it and I
Sure.
understood that it was necessary. And there was a phrase that was said at one point, basically was, I said to them, well, I'd hope that you would be a father figure in my life. And the phrase was back to me, well, I don't have time for that. From that, it threw me in a spiral, because what I was hearing was, in my head, this is the leader in your life and they don't have time for you. So God doesn't have time for you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's how it
And
works.
so it plays over in my head. And so, not that I ever question ministry or question being called by God, but I question whether my identity was in the Lord, really, as a son, because I was searching for that father figure, mentor. And
so that thought, I really don't have time, which was probably true.
was probably true.
Right? I mean,
it
I'm not gonna
was.
lie to
Looking
you.
back, it was true.
Oh, well, sure. But it really doesn't matter, truth or not truth. When the drip starts,
Yep.
even if it's spoken to you in truth,
Yep.
like somebody coming to me in truth, and this really happened. I hadn't seen somebody for like 5 years, and they saw me, right? First thing they said when they saw me, not, yo, what's up? How you doing? Still alive? Anything.
Right.
The first thing saying, my God, you gotten huge, right? Okay.
Right.
It was true.
Right.
I'd gotten huge, but it gave me a complex.
Yeah.
I even told Joey, I said, don't ever film me from the side, ever, because I look pregnant. So just don't, right? So thoughts that get in our head, and they just go over and over. You're fat, you're ugly. For a girl, like I said yesterday, gets in her mind, you're ugly, nobody likes you. You're not the popular, and we just go get over it, right? Just get over it.
Yeah.
All right. How did you take this? I don't have time for you, which was probably a truthful statement,
Correct.
but it didn't matter,
Right.
because the devil grabbed it and started playing it over and over and over. I don't have time for you. I don't have time. which translates to neither does God, which translate you're worthless probably. Why even be ministry? Nobody's ever going to look, here we go. Yep. How did you recognize what was happening, and then how did you get over it?
What's really funny is a few days later I met you. And
I didn't even know you were going to say that.
Yeah.
I remember that day at
Shane's
Rib Shack.
You and me and Ryan
And
went.
I even hate Shane's. And I guess God knew that I needed to meet you.
A little secret. Shane's is not my favorite. I like it.
Not either. And God took us to a place we both hated.
That's right.
And we've become best friends.
That's
Ryan
right.
was last week, but not anymore.
Right.
You are now my best friend.
So I met with you and Ryan, and I really kind of just shared everything. And God just started working. Even though in the moment, and this is really critical though, it didn't happen like that. Like the word came in like that, but the unraveling of the word didn't happen overnight.
Right.
So just meeting with you and then getting to know you over time and seeing, hey, this is what God did. And God placed someone in my life that was and now is a friend, mentor, leader that has helped me reconnect to the call, the purpose that God has on my life. But I couldn't do it alone.
Right.
And I think a lot of people do that alone. I think Jonah was trying to do it alone.
Oh, sure. He's in a boat by himself.
By himself.
Right.
But he knew what he was called to do. And there was never a day that I didn't know that God had called me.
Right.
And there was never a day that I didn't know that God was going to use me again.
Right.
But at the same time, it was a process.
Yeah. Well, our whole thing is how perceptions hinder God, right? It's not like this is God's problem. But I go back to, in the book, that first chapter is called The Little Drip. Here's where it started for me. Age 10, watching a movie called Death Be Not Proud, and the dude in the movie gets a brain tumor, and he's a kid, and he dies. I never would have thought. I was an old yeller dude, like, it's always going to come out, we're gonna. And then when this dude died, I remember as a 10-year-old kid going, he's not supposed to die. Right. I mean, he's the star of the show, right? It was Robbie Benson was the guy playing the part. And it was the next day I woke up as a 10-year-old kid, and I had the thought, if he could die of a brain tumor, so could you.
Wow.
Right? So 10 years old, I just have a thought, a drip. It was about 2 months later, I vividly remember riding in the car, and I was feeling my head. And my mother said, what do you keep doing with your head? And I said, I'm just seeing if I have a brain tumor, right? That's how real it started becoming.
Yeah.
It's comical now, right?
Yeah.
I saw you laugh. It is comical now.
Well, the laughing part was I pictured Mama
sure.
June going, boy.
Right, yeah, I'm an idiot. But that translated into age 15, age 11, 12, 13, couldn't even spend the night away from home because I was afraid I would die. Wow. Age 16 to about 22, I can't even go into a hospital. I can't watch anything on TV about hospitals, death, dying, car wrecks, anything, because it sends me into panic attacks. Then I get in ministry, and I'm in ministry, and I'm supposed to go to the hospitals and pray for people, right? I would get to the hospital parking lot. I couldn't go in. Wow. Off a thought that happened at 10 years old.
Man.
And it was July 31st, 8:20 p.m., 1995, 120 Cornerstone Drive, Johnson City, Tennessee, when I finally found how to find freedom. And I'm going to teach that tomorrow. How I found freedom from a drip that from 1975 till 1995, 20 years of a thought, if he died, you could die. And I had a friend in college, had a car wreck. If I can kill him, I'll kill you. I had my wife, Monica, get hit by a drunk driver and died. If I kill her, I'll kill you. And so it was just this constant thing that stayed in the back of my mind. And I see that a lot of times with kids, you must be gay or home. And then that thought, well, maybe I am. Or just watching, and all of a sudden a young boy feels like, well, maybe I am gay. And probably isn't, but the thought begins to brew, well, what if I am? Right. And I might be. And then all of a sudden might be what if becomes, well, I am.
Right.
And so I want to kind of end tomorrow with how to overcome the drips that become so real.
Yeah.
The things that maybe if you could identify the one drip you've had to maybe deal with long term in your life. I know a lot of men deal with drips of rejection, drips of insecurity, competition, and things like that. And I'm raising daughters, a lot of times girls can deal with drips about their perceptions of their body and their lives. And so that's how I want to end tomorrow. So, man, I'm going to invite you back Friday. We're going to conclude with how do we handle when our perceptions start hindering God's purposes, but more than that, start making a mess out of our own life like Jonah. Come back tomorrow. Remember, I always ask you to pray this. If you do, it really does make a difference. If you can use anything, God, you can use me. You will pray that God will use you in profound ways to bring his life to other people. Derrick and I love you. We bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.